those. So if you guys are looking to either raise capital, have capital, something like that, you'll get a chance right at the end to go ahead and do some deal pitching. So, all right. So I believe we are live. So everyone grab your seats, grab your beers. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Dallas Self-Directed IRA Social. For those of you out there online, if you do have any questions, put them right there in the chat box. We have a moderator. They'll be answering your questions for you as we go along. All right. But I do have a unique speaker for you today. But before I dive into her, we're going to talk a little bit about who is Quest. Currently, we're actually the largest self-directed IRA company in Texas, soon to be the largest in the U.S. So we are drastically growing with a little over 20,000 active clients, a little over now $2 billion in assets, and about $400 million in undirected cash. Just so you guys are aware, for everything we're talking about today, it's only for your educational purposes. We're not giving you any type of investment advice, legal advice, because you're not paying us. So, right? Now, I do see up here I got some toasters. Anyone want a free toaster? Who remembers, who's old enough to remember those old ads where, hey, if you come into the bank, you set up a checking account, and we'll give you a free blender. We'll give you a free toaster. Well, my CEO and my president are old enough to remember those. I don't remember those commercials. So he literally went and bought a bunch of toasters, I swear to God, to give them out to people. So I figured I'd give one free toaster out to anyone out here in the audience, the first person. If anyone would really like a free toaster, it's all yours. But if you do set up an IRA with us today, we'll 100% waive the fee for you. Okay, if you're sitting here in the classroom. If you're online, email me and I'll go ahead and mail you a toaster, but I won't be able to set up your account for free because you're not here in person. That's why you got to show up in person. So if you guys want any applications today, will be 100% free, and you get yourself a free toaster as you leave. All right. That being said, guys, we're going to kind of keep just diving right on in. We're going to talk about some of our other weekly classes. We try to do multiple classes every single week, from Tuesday and Saturdays, and sometimes even Thursdays. They're in the morning and in the evenings. They're all recorded. So anything that's going on today, guys, or even right now, it's going to be recorded. And you can go back and re-watch it right there on YouTube. Right? Don't forget about our self-directed Saturday class. This is probably our busiest one. We do not do this one in person yet. Notice I say yet. We would like to start doing it in person. Obviously, COVID kind of put a stop to that, and I appreciate all you guys coming out here today. So we do always do a virtual happy hour as well. What we do is online, we bring a lot of people together and allow them to pitch their investments. We do that once every month. It's going to be the fourth Wednesday of the month. The real thing, though, I want to talk about is our Expo. Has anyone in here ever been to either the Dallas Expo or the Houston Expo that we did pre-COVID? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you, Nancy. Yes. So we had a couple of people show up here. This Expo is a must-attend event, no matter what level you are as a real estate investor. So what we're doing this year in Houston, near the end of September, right? We're going to be bringing in 30 to 40 speakers from across the U.S. that talk about different topics in real estate. In addition, none of them are selling a program. I like to bring that up because we've all been there, right? So what's nice about this is they are people that are very active in the space that they're going to be talking about. We bring in CPAs, tax attorneys, right? So you can go and actually get your tax, legal, investment, questions answered. Lastly, we bring in multiple vendors. And then what really does help is sometimes we need a little extra push. Sometimes we need, I can hear my voice out there on Facebook. Thank you. Yes, like the video. Like it. So sometimes we do need that little extra push. And it's funny because I'm saying none of these guys are selling programs or anything like that, but those are sometimes what gets us to the next level. So what I do like is that you can find your next mentor. You can find your next deal. You can find your private lender. This is why the Expo is a must-attend event, right? The tickets are $150. It's the only event that we charge for. So if you would like to go, grab a ticket. It's still early bird pricing. Send me an email. I'll get you my email address right before the end of this. So that's pretty much it for me. Let me know if you want to set up an account, if you want a free toaster, or if you'd like to come to the Quest Expo. Outside of that, I want to talk a little bit about our up-and-coming speaker that we have tonight. And I was telling a couple of you guys out there already that we're actually very lucky. So the reason we're so lucky is because the young lady I'm going to have come up here, she is a best-selling author. She has multiple books out there where she's actually helped a lot of the population go through different aspects in real estate. She's been able to teach and train multiple people on things from how to fix and flip properties in an up market or a down market. One of my favorite topics, how to talk with a private lender. All of us out there need to know how to raise capital. We need money for something, and she's an expert in that. She's an expert in seller financing, but she's also an expert in how to build an Airbnb business, which is why we're all here today, correct? Airbnbs have been blowing up drastically. Me, myself, I actually haven't taken the leap yet. I own multiple rentals right now. I have a lot of notes and some oil and gas investments, but I've been a little scared to take that extra leap. But it's funny, it's me and my wife, just this week, we're talking about, man, it would be nice to have a vacation home out in Galveston, right? I live in Houston. So we kind of wanted that vacation home out in Galveston, but what would we do with it for the rest of the time? Well, let's Airbnb it out. So that's why I'm actually really excited today. I get to introduce one of our favorite speakers, Miss Nancy Wallace-Laabs. How you doing?
Eric, thank you. I'm so excited. All right, am I on? Am I live? Am I live? Am I live? So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm going to give a shout out to the Expo. Wow.
She actually is going to be one of our vendors there.
Wow. Yes. Such a good. The first time I went, oh my gosh! First of all, great party. You know, I love the casino night, which I think they're doing again, right?
Yeah. So the casino night, what we do is we actually give you guys free money. Okay. Now it's fake money. You get to gamble, 100% open bar, beer, drinks, whiskey, wine, you name it. It's all on us. At the end of the night, the money you win, you get to use as raffles to bid on actual prizes. So it's pretty unique.
Yeah,
it's completely.
It's an awesome
the casino
time.
night's fun.
You got to go, and it's my birthday weekend, so hey, let's go because it's kind of a big one for me. All right, I'm not going to say what it is, but well, thank you, Derek.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Is this my clicker, or do I need
clicker.
Do I need? Let's talk into this.
Yeah,
all right.
Talk normal.
All right, guys.
It shouldn't pick you up.
All right. Well, I'm excited to be here. As you may have known, I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend, Kristen Gerst. So Kristen was actually supposed to be the speaker tonight. So she had a conflict. And so when Quest and Kristen reached out to me, I was like, Kristen. So I actually learned how to do owner financing from Kristen. I went to one of her lunch and learns. I did everything she said, and within a month, I went home, I did everything she said, and within a month, I had my first deal. And it's actually one of the deals I talk the most about here. If you've heard me talk about my deal where I got for $5,000, I owner finance for $50,000. I learned that strategy from Kristen. So Kristen, thank you very much for having, and Quest, thank you, and thank you everybody for having me here. So let's get into short-term rentals. Okay, first of all, let me make sure, am I going the right way? You will find that I know a lot of things, but technology, there we go, here I am. So Winning Deals and Heels was the name of my first book. It was a national seller, and Kristen was actually one of the first people that I interviewed when I wanted to do a book about women real estate investors. So what I want to talk about tonight is Airbnb, because it's hot. Is it hot? I mean, everyone wants to know how to get into it, how much money can you make, is it hard to do? And a little background, I am a former property manager. I used to have my own property management company for long-term rentals, right? So if any of you have had long-term rentals, that's a chore just in itself. So I have found short-term rental is like almost refreshing as an investor, because first of all, the people that are coming to your house, they want to be there. They're happy to be there. Most of the time they're on vacation. So I love the short-term rental strategy. Now, we're going to talk about alphabet soup tonight because I want you to keep up with me. So Airbnb is actually, the name Airbnb. That's the franchise or whatever. Then there's VRBO, there's Booking.com, there's Expedia. That's just a platform. So we're going to be talking about self-directed IRAs. That's the money, right? How you're going to buy it. Airbnb, VRBO, that's the platforms where you list the property, right? STR is what I call a short-term rental, okay? A short-term rental goes on the platforms for Airbnb, VRBO, and that kind of thing. IRS, you don't want to hear from them, okay? And there's I'm not an attorney or a CPA, So there is some little things about short-term rentals and UBIT and all of that if you make too much money. So just you check with your CPA on that. And then SOL if you get lost. Okay, I'll come back, and that's what I'm here for. So short-term rental stats, I wanted to give you a little background, right? Because it's not for the faint of heart, and you can see a lot of people want to get into it. So worldwide, there's 2.9 million hosts. There's 14,000 new hosts, that's like you, coming into the market every month. There's 7 million listings in 100,000 cities in 220 countries and regions. So those are some Airbnb stats. So you can see it's really something that people want to get invested in. Now, are short-term rentals a good investment? Okay, from my personal opinion, I was talking to this gentleman down here. He has a long, how we got started. We took one of our long-term rentals and we converted it just to see what would happen. And I have a slide here. I didn't, there's all kinds of places that you can have a short-term rental in the world. We have a gentleman here that invests in Florida. Do we have anybody else that invests outside of Texas? Okay, where do you guys invest? Hawaii? Yeah, okay, so he has, because I met him earlier. Yay, Hawaii. How about you, Kim? Where do you guys have one? Nashville, that's a great area. Anybody else? Did I miss anybody? Yes. Where? Okay, all right. So you can pretty much go anywhere. I have a friend that bought a little tiny hotel in a little Mexican resort, and they turned it into an Airbnb. So there's ways to find out how you can do it. So first of all, they can produce 2 to 3 times more income than your long-term rental, and you don't have to rent them out as often. So if you can get, let's say, I have a house in Grand Prairie, and the price of the rent is somewhere between $1,800 and $2,200. So I went on AirDNA, which you don't have to write that down. And I said, oh my gosh, I could make $300 a night with this property, and I only have to rent it 10 nights a month. So how much is that? That's $3,000. What did I just say? Top of the market, I'd probably get 22. So I'm already ahead $800, and I'm only renting it 10 nights a month. So that's just one example. You can adjust the rental rates. For those of you who have had long-term rentals, you sign the lease, whether you do it for 3 months, 6 months, and you can't change the rent, right? So what if there's a big event? And, if you're paying attention on your short-term rentals, what you'll want to do is find out what events are happening in the area, and you'll adjust your rates. So you can literally go in and adjust your rates up when there's big events, or if it's a slow period, you can adjust them down. So I like to try and get my weeks booked. So I'll go down a little bit on my price during the week, but my weekend prices are higher. And better care of your property, because with long-term rentals, like the one I was just talking about, I've had a tenant in there for 5 years. So I have a property management company, because after I stopped doing it, I had to hire one. And so after I found out the property inspection report, I know that they didn't go into that property even every year. There's a lot kind of wrong with the property. But with short-term rentals, you have a cleaning crew, you're turning it, less than 28 days. So you days, 7 days, 14 days. But the idea is that you're having a cleaning company, or you're turning the property so you're able to catch those maintenance issues before they blow up. We just had one where we went to one of our properties, and we were kind of doing some stuff on the outside, and I was like, what is all that water streaming down from the, what's the pipe called, Brian? Yeah, just streaming down. Well, it was the line to the condensation was plugged, I guess. And so we had to call a plumber out, but that could have been a disaster when we had a guest. We were able to get our AC guy out there, take care of it, get it cleaned up. But that could have been a huge disaster. And then just the flexibility you have with short-term rentals in terms of, you can do short-term rentals like to nurse finders. A lot of people, if you think about this, if you have a area around a hospital or a teaching university, you can rent to nurses. There's a platform called Nurse Finders or Furnish Finders. You can rent to traveling doctors and nurses. You can do corporate rentals. So you can have targeted audiences of who you want to rent to. Now, I thought this was very interesting. So this just happened to be the top 8 places trending US destinations. Okay, I had to look up Pasadena because when at first I saw that, I was like, oh, are they talking about California? Pasadena was #1. Does anybody know where Pasadena is? Yeah, so that's like one of the trending Texas destinations. Then Grand Prairie was #2. So when I saw this, I did this slide. So I said, this is my husband, Brian. I was like, oh my gosh, that rental that we're getting ready to sell, we need to rethink that because maybe we need to turn it into a short-term rental. Fort Worth, Lubbock, San Antonio, Dallas, El Paso, Amarillo. Are you surprised at any of those cities? Are you surprised of any that's not on there? What? Austin. Yeah, Austin wasn't on there. But that just is the top. I mean, I think they were on there. They were just not in the top, 8 that I did. So, okay. So when you are starting the process for taking your self-directed IRA and investing it in a short-term rental, you got to ask yourself some questions. So, number one, how much does it cost to hold? So the thing with a self-directed IRA and purchasing properties, whether it's a short-term rental, it's a buy and hold, it's an owner finance, all of the money has to come out of the IRA, the expenses, and all of the income has to come back into the self-directed IRA. So you can't have a middle woman, I called it. So how much revenue will it earn? Are there restrictions in the area? So as you can probably know, like you keep up with cities and what restrictions are happening. Like I live in Frisco and they just made some restrictions. You can still do them, but they have to be 30 days as the HM restrictions. So before you say, yes, I'm going to use my self-directed IRA for a short-term rental, these are the questions that you want to find out. How to control ongoing costs, because with the self-directed IRA, all of the expenses are going where? They're going out, but then the income has to come back in, right? And we're going to talk about how you even handle that with a short-term rental. And then how are you going to attract guests and bookings? Because we talked about these places, right? And I talked to a few of you about, well, I think I might have a good place here. Well, there's actually a way to determine if the property you're looking at is going to make a good short-term rental. And then, things happen in the real estate market. What is the exit strategy? Because if something happens to the short market, what are you going to do with that property? So you always have to think about what your exit strategy is going to be. So I think you guys know this, but I just had to put this slide in here. These are all the types of the self-directed IRAs you can use. The key is to have a custodial company like Quest where you have the money. So if you have, I get this question a lot, like if you have Fidelity or I don't know, another 401k, you're not going to be able to use those funds, unless they're self-directed. So that's the key. They have to be self-directed IRAs. Now, when you purchase with a self-directed IRA, there are some rules that you have to follow. So number one rule is you want to do your due diligence. So just like any real estate investment, you're going to run the numbers on a short-term rental. You're going to find out the expenses. You're going to find out, sorry, I have to get a little drink here. Brian, can you get me some water, please? Sorry. Oh, my goodness. So you're going to want to factor your income and expenses. Is there going to be any management of a short-term rental? Thank you. Oh, yes. Okay, sorry about that, guys. It always happens at the most inconvenient times. Whoops, back. And are you going to have someone manage your short-term rental? How are you going to plan for covering expenses, your turnover, your furnishings and stocking? All of that has to come out of your self-directed IRA. So also, I did have to look this one up. According to the IRS, this is strictly an investment property. So a lot of times you'll buy a short-term rental because your family wants to use it. If your short-term rental is purchased by your self-directed IRA, you can't use it for your personalness, right? So there's IRS rules around that. So you will want to check with your CPA and tax advisor. So I'm going to take a second here and see if anybody has any questions while I just catch my breath. No? Yes.
You can't use it as vacation, even if you have a short-term rental like an LLC and you're paying the rent. Could you do that as a client?
So is Derek still in the room here? So here, according to what I read, so the IRS has rules about if you can't benefit because the self-directed IRA owns the property, not you, Lorraine, or me, Nancy. So when you use your self-directed IRA, then the self-directed IRA has to own the property in whole, right? So what that means is that, let's say I had $50,000 in a self-directed IRA, and I found a property for $200,000 that I wanted to make a short-term rental. So I want to use $50,000 as a down payment and go borrow $150,000. Can't do that. Now, I know that there's some recourse loans or whatever. I personally haven't ever done that before. So yeah, Susan's shaking her head too. So you have to have the money in your self-directed IRA or have qualifying members. So let's say Brian has $150,000 in his self-directed IRA and I have $50,000 and we're purchasing this property for $200,000, you can do that, right? But when we do that, the furnishings, the stocking, the toilet paper, the soap, the shampoo, all has to be purchased by what? The IRA, exactly. So there's a lot of rules with the self-directed IRA. So when you are getting ready to do that, that's why I'm saying you have to do your due diligence. Now, I'm going to show you some ways around that it sounds like it would be kind of convoluted. It's like, oh my gosh, well, how can I do that? And I have all the expenses and I have all the, the income. How am I going to get it in and out of my IRA without paying taxes or penalties or getting flagged by the IRS? And there's a way to do that. Whoops. So owning a short-term rental with a self-directed IRA, just kind of reiterate this, the property must be owned entirely by the self-directed IRA, or the property must be owned by combined qualified member accounts. So if you think like husband, wife, family, if you had your kids had a health, you had a Coverdale educational account, you had a health savings account, you can combine those within the same qualified family members. Does that make sense? So you can come together to buy one property. And the way that works, I'll do another class on this, but the way it works is that each IRA owns an undivided interest. So for math, let's just say we found a great property that cost $100,000 and Brian has $25,000, I have $25,000, our daughter has $25,000, and our son has $25,000. We don't have a son, but he's here for the right? So each of % of an undivided interest of that property, and that's how it's written on the title. A Quest Trust Company for the benefit of Nancy Wallace-Laabs, undivided interest of 25%, and it literally says that on the deed of trust. Now, the structure. So I've already said so if you think about this, if you have a balance sheet, right? So the short-term rental is this entity that you own, right? The self-directed IRA. So on one hand, you have all the income that you're going to make, yay, and that has to move into the self-directed IRA. But over here, you have expenses. And so those have to move from the self-directed IRA out to the vendors. The vendors could be your cleaning person. Maybe you have to have carpet done. Maybe your the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance. All of those expenses must be paid by the self-directed IRA. Now, to really complicate it, that example I just did with Brian, where I said 25% undivided in interest. So let's just say, for another math problem, let's say that our insurance is $100 a month. So each of our IRAs must pay $25 per month for our insurance. So you have to keep very good records, and you have to know what paperwork from the custodial company, as this case is Quest Trust Company, what paperwork you need to know so that you can take in income and pay expenses. So have I confused you? Does it seem clear? I see some people going, yeah, okay, good. So it's basically no middleman / woman, right? You can't have a middleman. So I can't take the money, so on the Airbnb platform, I have my property listed. So I have to have the money deposited in to what? The IRA. And so there is a way to do that on the platforms, but you would have to make sure that VRBO does that, and you do it on all, there's I don't know, over 100 platforms you can put your properties on. So services such as cleaning, handyman cannot be disqualified individuals. So I get this question asked a lot. So let's say that, so Brian and I, we have our imaginary son, his name's gonna be Tim. And Tim, he has a handyman / cleaning service. So and Tim's has 25% interest in the short-term rental because he took his $25,000 and he helped us buy it. So now we're going to hire Tim to clean and do handyman. Can you do that? No. That would be considered he'd be a disqualified individual. So you can see that it can get kind of dicey owning a short-term rental with your self-directed IRA. So right now you'd probably be going, well, why would I do that? Well, I'm going to show you how you can do it and make it much easier. So the payments set up through booking platforms. So remember in the beginning, I said we're going to do alphabet soup. So you got Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. You have furnish finders. You have nurses, traveling, corporate. And you just set up the payments so that when the person pays through whatever platform, that money just is directed right to Quest Trust Company for the benefit of your self-directed IRA. The income, this is what I was talking about, could be, that means, and I'm not, this is not my area of expertise. I'm not a CPA, can't really talk about the tax. It's based on how much rent, if you, for a period of 7 days or less, based on rental periods. So there's some things with UBIT that you could be taxed on as far as the rent income, depending on how you do it. So it's very important to really talk with your CPA and your Quest associate. Expenses paid through a self-directed IRA, I'm going to kind of go through that: maintenance, insurance, taxes, your mortgage, if you have a mortgage. But if you're buying it through a self-directed IRA, are you going to have a mortgage? No, you're not going to. Utilities, lawn service, pool, hot tub. I put that one on there because I have a property with a pool and I have a property with a hot tub, and I need to have somebody make sure it works all the time so that it's ready for the guests. So that would be another expense. Cleaning. So these are, every time you turn a property, these are the expenses that you're going to have. So, how are you going to get the people paid? So do you think your cleaning crew that comes in is going to want to, if you've ever done a distribution where you're trying to, from your self-directed IRA, where you're trying to pay some expense? Has anybody ever done that before? No? Okay, I've only done it when I'm like, yes. Okay, so how fast does it go? Can you do it? A business week, right? So most cleaning people, handyman, when do they want to be paid? The next day, whatever. So sometimes that's not going to work. We have to kind of figure out a way. How can we do this? How can we put this strategy to work with our self-directed IRA? So we're getting there. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. So you manage the custodian. Okay, this is just, again, the paperwork to set up. There's paperwork to set up to receive the income. The rents paid go to the custodial company for the benefit of the account holder. And again, you have to set it up on Airbnb, VRBO. And so instead of setting up your bank account, like when you go to those platforms and you put a listing on there, they want to know, well, where should I send the money after you get a booking? Well, I want it to go to Quest Trust Company. And then expenses paid through the self-directed IRA, you use a form called the Payment Authorization Letter, or PAL. I'm laying out some steps here about, okay, first you have to purchase self-directed IRA, right? That's step one. Step two, you have to set it up so that any expenses that you have are paid by the self-directed IRA, whether that's the one that owns the entire property or the one where you're going to go into with family members and it's an undivided interest where you're going to have 25%, that's that kind of thing. And then you have to set it up so that the income goes in there. So far, so good? Does it sound like a lot of paperwork? So yes, could be, right? But what do you think I'm going to talk about next? How do you see how you could maybe get around this? Oh, that's okay. Create a parent company. Okay. That would probably be considered a middleman. That probably sounds like more. I have an easier one where you don't have to set that up. So what you're going to, the self-directed IRA hires the property management company. This is really the easiest way to do it so that you don't have to go through all that paperwork. So you're going to purchase the property with a self-directed IRA. That's easy to do. You fill out the paperwork, you buy the property, the self-directed IRA owns the property. Then the self-directed IRA hires the property management company, right? Cannot be a family member, right? Can't be a disqualified member. And all the income goes to the property management company. The property management company then pays whatever expenses there are, including the cleaning fees, the stocking. They keep their property management fee, and then the cash flow, it goes directly to the self-directed IRA. Do you see how that is? Now, you do incur the cost, usually for self-directed or short-term rentals, you're probably going to pay about 15-20% of the revenue to a property management company. But do you see how this would be a much easier way? You don't have to go to the expense of setting up a parent company. Don't even know if you can do that, but this is how you would do it. You would set up where you would purchase the property, and then all the income and expenses are paid by a property management company. Now, what you said, could you set up an LLC that the self-directed IRA then hires? So probably not if they have an interest. If the person, so let's say in my case, any of my, even though I have property management experience, we could not create an LLC that I would be the property manager because I own through my self-directed IRA. Does that make sense? But this is the easiest way to do it. And then you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, did I fill out that PLA and can I get people paid? Because the property management is now taking care of it for you. Now, it doesn't have to be, it can be a person. It could be a co-host, because the other thing we're going to talk about is it could be a private money lender. So how about this? So now I'm going to kind of switch gears, because I know we have some investors in here. So how could you use your self-directed IRA to be a private money lender in the short-term rental space? And one of the ways that you could do it, this is all creative, right? So private money lenders, the cool thing about that is it's all based on relationships. It's based on, how you structure your relationship and your joint venture agreement. So one thing I would say, if you're brand new to short-term rental, don't be a private money lender on a short-term rental. If you don't understand how it works, don't be that private money lender, right? Or if you don't know, so if somebody came up to me and said, hey, I have money, okay, well, I've been doing it a while, but you would ask for certain things. You're going to vet the borrower that you're giving it to, right? But, you want them to prove the income on that short-term rental. So if somebody came up to me and said, hey, can you be a private money lender? I'm getting ready to buy this property pick a town that no one's really heard of in Texas. Chico, Texas. And they said, hey, do you want to be the private money lender? I'm going to Airbnb this. Well, you know what? I'm going to put you through some steps. I'm going to say, well, how much money can you make? What's your nightly rate? What's your exit strategy? Basically, you want to know how I'm going to get paid, right? What's the saturation area with those? Because there is another way to tell that too. Like when you go to look for a short-term rental, there's a way to go on. I'm going to give you a little tip here. On Airbnb, use Airbnb, the platform. Okay, great. Everybody's familiar with it. So you go on Airbnb as a guest, not as a host, as a guest. And wherever you're looking at, Chico, Texas, we're looking for Airbnb in Chico, Texas. So we're going to go and find out if there are any Airbnbs in that area. And if there are, what do they charge? She's saying no. She's already looked. But you can also use it to find out how many are in Galveston, Texas, or how many are in Houston, or however many are in, whatever area you want to invest in. So you can do that before you even, when you have the property under contract, that's one of your due diligence if you're thinking about short-term rental, to find out how many Airbnbs are in that area and what are they charging per night. And then you can also click, because there's a little map, and you just keep zooming in and it'll actually show you the streets, and you can figure out where your property is located that you're thinking about making a short-term rental, and you can figure out how many Airbnbs are on the same street, what they're charging. You can click on their pictures and find out, how they've decorated and all of that. I, as a private money lender, I'd want to know, well, hey, you're getting ready to buy a property in downtown Dallas, and I heard they were going to go for rental registrations. What do you know about that? So the person that is coming to me about being, they want me to be a private money lender, or they're coming to you, what do they know about the area that they're trying to invest as a short-term rental? I always look at level of experience. And again, what's the exit strategy? Because the bottom line is, if you're going to use your self-directed IRA to be a private money lender to someone that's doing short-term rental, you've got to know, first of all, you should understand the industry. And if it were me, I would also say, hey, what's the property address? Let me do my own due diligence to find out how many Airbnbs are in that area. Does that make sense? Before you do that. So vet the borrower. You always want to be in first lien position. Anybody disagree with that? Yeah, first lien position. Don't lend at 100%. This is, again, using your self-directed IRA to be a private money lender for someone purchase. So there's some people in this room that probably have money and maybe lend. And one of the great rental strategies right now is short-term rentals. So you can actually negotiate to be maybe a co-host, right? So remember I talked about that property management, hired a property manager. So your private money lender could be that person. Do you see how that works? So they are using their self-directed IRA to help you buy it. You can make them a co-host. Now you can set it up behind the scenes. You need to have a really good JV agreement to do this. But let's say Susan's going to do this. And so Susan's going to, she's going to lend me money to buy my short-term rental, right? And then Susan, because I want her, she's like, I said, hey, you know what? The return on investment is like 500%. She's like, dang, and normally I would pay her like 10%, right, on your money. So I say, but I really need someone because I can't manage it. So I want my private money lender to manage it for me. So you're going to be responsible for taking my money, for putting in there. But I know you, Susan, right? And we're going to have a JV agreement. So it is another strategy, right? And then one of the things you have to know is, what if this short-term rental just fails to perform? Or in another class I do, this is kind of rely on Airbnb and VRBO and Booking.com and Furnish Finder platform shut down. So you have to kind of move. This takes a little while, but you have to move towards what's called direct booking, having your own website and being able to book directly, right? You avoid the other fees, but you're in control of who's coming to your property. And that's just another course. Bottom line, how will you be paid back? And this has to do with, again, private money lending. Now, before I move off, does anybody have any questions about that? Yes.
So in your example with you and your family, big family, so I mean, you're borrowing 100% of everyone's IRA. So then whenever taxes are due or if you need to pay something, you don't have the money in your IRA.
Okay. Oh, that's an excellent point. So, but my IRA so first of all, I can't draw my IRA down to zero. That doesn't work, right? So that's in the very beginning, I said, you have to figure out what your expenses are going to be. So do you have enough in your IRA to even do that? But your projections of income. So your IRA should be getting income. So in the example I was talking about, it's 4 of us in a family that own the short-term rental. We all have $25,000 in the $100,000 short-term rental that we bought in downtown Dallas. That's super cute. We're getting $500 a night, right? So what happens is that when I have to have money to furnish it. I have to have money to stock it. So it's not just about the purchase, right? Because what did I say? Your short-term or your self-directed IRA has to pay the expenses. So you can purchase the property for 100,000, but now you're going to need another 15 to 20 just to furnish it. So where's that money coming from? So if you don't have it in your short-term rental, then you won't be able to do it. Now, and you can't borrow that money. So you wouldn't be able to do it. So in the example I gave, I wouldn't be able to do it. I would have to have more money in my self-directed IRA.
What if you, I mean, even if you maybe you did your calculations wrong and, then
So that's by a CPA, but there was probably going to be some penalties because number one, you know what I mean? So then you get the IRS involved. And so there's probably penalties. And if you have to, you wouldn't be following the rules of using your self-directed IRA. So what's the possibility of you getting caught by the IRS or it gets reported? You know what I mean? So that would be a question that you'd want to talk with one of the Quest people with, and also your CPA, because that is, if you don't have enough money, that's a problem. Yeah. And then what happens if you buy this short-term rental with your self-directed IRA and then the market goes flat? What's your exit strategy going to be? Can you even make the mortgage payments? Did you, if you bought too big of a property and now you can only long-term rent it, which you could still do. You can switch the exit strategy, even though your short-term rental is owned by your self-directed IRA. But what if you can't get enough rent to cover the mortgage and the utilities? Now, not utilities, but the taxes and insurance. Because once it becomes a long-term rental, then you turn those utilities back over to the tenant. But yeah, so you have to, up in the very beginning, I said you have to do your due diligence. So the short-term rental strategy is great. If you do it's like everything in investing, you have to know the numbers. You have to, ARV doesn't really come into it. I mean, would you agree with Susan? ARV doesn't really come into short-term rental. I don't look for distressed properties. I buy them right off the MLS amounts. What I'm looking for, if the short-term rental tanks, what can I do with this property later? Will I be able to sell it? Will I be able to own or finance it? Will it be a long-term rental? But when I look at property, I'm not necessarily looking for distressed properties because I want something turnkey that I can get up and running. So, which is kind of nice as a better way, not better, but just a different, refreshing way instead of going out there knocking yourself out 30% of ARV all the time, right? So, he had a question first, and I'll come back to you.
So, you're a 4-kid family?
Yes.
Kid family,
Yes.
so you got a 5th kid. It's not Timmy, but Billy or and Billy opens up a property management company and property manages your property.
So he would be a disqualified because he's in the down chain, right? So there's, he didn't invest, but he's still within the, yes. Yeah, so Billy, just missed out, so. Yeah. Like Billy, get a job, so. Yes, so there are different ways. Now, I have purchased, so going back to the private money lender, $50,000. So what we'll do is we'll come together with those people and we'll be the lender. So we can lend on short-term rentals. We can lend on long-term rentals, that kind of thing. So it's 2 different kinds of strategies. So if you have money that you want to invest, so let's say you only have $25,000 in your self-directed IRA and you want to get into the short-term rental game, then that's a way to do it, is to become a private money lender, but $25,000 isn't going to cut it, right? So in your case, what you were talking about, like what if you didn't have enough money? So you wouldn't have bought it with the self-directed IRA, as in the case with, Billy and Timmy and all of that. What you would do is you would go and find private money lenders to borrow you the $100,000 plus what you need to furnish it, stock it, and kind of get you, to close on and everything. But in that case, if I'm a private money lender, I'm not going to lend at 100%. Right? So now we're talking about, you do have to look at ARV because you have to say, okay, I'm only going to lend to you, let's say 70%, and that includes furnishing it as a private money lender. So you just have to make sure you're always protected. So did that kind of clear that up? And then you had a question. Yes, so it's two different ways to invest. So if you do not have the full amount of money to purchase the the short-term rental, right, with your self-directed IRA, either you don't have enough in combined qualified members, which is in the family. So then you couldn't even do it, right? So let's say you have $300,000 in your self-directed IRA though, and you find a property for $200,000 and you're going to furnish it for, let's just say everything in under $50,000. So let's just call it $250 with closing costs and everything. So you have enough to do that, to get up and running, to do a short-term rental, everything comes out. And in that case, it makes the most sense because it's usually just, you're purchasing the property. So you have the cost of the actual purchase of the property, and then you'll have the cost of the, the furnishings and things like that. Now, what you can do is let's say you're going to buy furniture off of Facebook Marketplace. Okay. So I believe that there's a way that you can go and you can kind of get a lump sum, but you have to itemize everything that you have money for, right? You have to have receipts for everything. So instead of getting like, 500 and 300, but your utilities, your cleaning people, all of that would have to be set up. And you can do recurring payments. I forgot to mention that. So when you have taxes and insurance, and you have cleaning fees, you can make all of those recurring within the self-directed IRA. There's a way to do a distribution for payment, the payment authorization, and there's actually a box you can check that says, is this a recurring payment? So let's say you're on monthly insurance. Yes, you just check that box, and then your self-directed IRA, the custodial company on your behalf is going to just take the money every month right out of your account and pay that bill. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you use a private, you wouldn't have a private money lender. So if you have, because you're using your entire self-directed IRA, you have $300,000. Okay, so let's reverse it. Let's say you only have $50,000 in your self-directed IRA. You're purchasing a property for $200,000, right? So you're going to have to go find a private money lender. So you're not using your self-directed IRA at all because you can't buy that property. You don't have enough money. You just don't have enough money in your self-directed IRA to buy it. You could buy it is if your husband, if your son, daughter, a qualified family member, you put your money together. You don't combine the money. It's not like you open an account and put all the money in. You each have an undivided interest in that property.
Well, that makes sense. But the private, lender scenario is completely separate.
Yes, completely separate. Because you would only use a private money lender if you didn't have the money. Now, I have used scenarios on regular properties, so it would work the same on short-term rental. So I've purchased a property, let's say with a hard money lender because it needed repairs or whatever. And then I went to a private money lender to, let's say, furnish. So you could do that. But the thing is, they're not going to have first lien. And what did I say? That was one of the rules of private money lending. You need to be in first lien position. So it would have to be somebody that you knew very well to ever do second lien. So, okay, any more questions? I know it gets sticky, right, when you're talking about it. It's because of the rules, and you have to remember that the self-directed, you personally, your LLC does not own that property. It's the self-directed IRA, and then when you use a self-directed IRA to purchase a property, there's rules around that, and the main rule is that the money has to go in when you have income generating, whether it's long-term rental, short-term rental, or even a flip, and then the money has to go out for all the expenses that are associated with that property. And through Quest, they have the owner portal that you go in, the client portal, and all of these forms are right there, and they're actually very easy. I know it probably sounds complicated, but it's really not as complicated. It's just knowing the process. It's more the process and knowing what form and when to use it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the tools that I use to figure out if this is going to be, this is kind of what y'all are looking for. So first of all, there's a platform called AirDNA. It's not Airbnb, it's called AirDNA. Now, I have the free version, and you all can just sign up, you create an account, and you can type in any property address anywhere, and it will give you how much per night and what the occupancy rate is of that property. So that's what I tell people first off. Go here, put in the address. It'll ask you like how many beds, how many people you can sleep. And then it'll actually, there's a little bit of a report that'll give you a return on investment. So it'll give you like a cap rate. So right off the bat, you can just, before you even know if you're thinking this is a strategy you want to do with the property, this is what you do first. You go to AirDNA to find out what can I charge per night? How much money am I going to make on that property? Then when you do that, the next thing you do is go to Airbnb as a what? A guest. And so on the guest, what are you looking for? You're looking for saturation. How many properties in the area are already an Airbnb? Not just that, how many of them are 2 bedrooms? How many are condos? How many are homes? How many have pools? How many offer hot tubs? So what you're looking for is the property you're considering as a short-term rental. Does it stack up, and do you offer something different? And I was talking to someone about, doing their RV. I mean, think about all the guest experiences. There's high-end homes, there's, lower-end homes, there's hot tubs, there's pools. And then I always recommend running rental comps because you always need to have an exit strategy. So if you find out that this property you're looking at has strong rental comps, so if you know, okay, the short-term rental market's going to tank, what can I do? Well, I can always use it as a long-term rental. Also, it helps you with just knowing like what your expenses are in case you do a long-term rental. And then I always talk to people about what's your marketing strategy. So it's great to have a short-term rental, but you do have to have a marketing strategy to get it filled. You can't just throw it up on Airbnb. And I mean, sometimes it works where you get bookings, but after a while, when you're a brand new host, you only have about 7 to 10 days when they'll give you like, oh, you're a new host, yay, new listing. But after that, boom. So if nobody's booking your property, how are you going to rank? And there's a whole strategy just around that. And also, who's your target audience going to be? Like if you have a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, you're probably not going to be marketing to families, right? It's more like a weekend getaway, couples, corporate, traveling nurses. So you kind of got to think about who your market is, because that makes a big difference. So you can say, oh, yay, I'm going to get like $300, $400 a night. But if everybody else in your area is doing families, then is a romantic couples getaway right in the middle of all that, how lucrative is that going to be? How many bookings are you going to get? And then the ARV, repairs, sales price, just so you know, like if you have to sell it, where you at? I mean, in this market's hard because, I mean, next year it could be double or it could have dropped, right? And then basically your bottom line is how are you going to make money with this property? So I'm going to just give you an example of what happened with Airbnb. So right before COVID, or right after COVID, Airbnb as a company made a decision that affected all the, however many millions of hosts. And what they said is, we don't care what your cancellation policy, we're able to set that. Anybody who says that they've had exposed to COVID, no matter when, if it's the day before, they get their money back. They get refunded, regardless of your cancellation fees. So what did that do to hosts? A lot of hosts tanked, and that was an Airbnb company-wide decision that affected hosts. So when I talk about, looking towards direct booking, do you want your company, your business, your investing business to be, dictated by what Airbnb decides to do? So they just came out with a new rule that if they have to move a guest and the host did kind of uproar, that the host has to pay for that. So yeah, so I mean, there's like things like if a host, there's in anything, there's scammers, but if a guest comes to your property and your listing wasn't what they said it was, they can complain, get their money back. So you're kind of at the mercy of, what Airbnb's policies are. So anyway, the point being is that you kind of got to know, how to market to the right people, and like we got Superhost, yay for us, but you know what? It could be taken away. It all has to do with response rate and how you handle guests and you don't cancel and that kind of thing. But it's just, and it does give you more rankings on the Airbnb platform, and it's looked at quarterly. But, next month, because somebody didn't like, my dog policy, then they could, complain. I would lose my super status host or whatever. So you can see, you want to first find out with your short-term rental. So if you're thinking about, so I want to kind of go back here. So we're talking about using your self-directed IRA, right? So self-directed IRA money is not finite. It's something that you're you know, you have this much money and you have to figure out how you're going to invest it and how you should invest it, if short-term rentals, if it's a private money. But the thing with the short-term rentals is that you have to have it set up properly and know the process so that you can accept the income and that you can pay the expenses. That's kind of the point I was trying to get there. So do you guys have any questions about that? No? Okay. We talked more about the private money lender is could be made a co-host. They do collect interest and points, but you know, if it was a really lucrative deal and you needed help and they had experience with co-hosting and managing, this is something they could do. The way co-hosting works is they can have different duties, if you will. It's kind of like property management, but they call them co-hosts, but they have access to the calendar. So if I was going to be a private money lender with my self-directed IRA, I would insist that I have access to your calendar. Why? Because I want to make sure that you're getting bookings, because the last thing you want is to be a private money lender with your self-directed IRA to someone who's not getting bookings on the platform. So, yes.
What would you say like the average interest rate is that a private money lender would charge?
So typically, I mean, I pay 2 points and 10%. So it's all based on relationships, you know, building private money. And all of my private money lenders I got through Quest events, you know, coming to when they had all the lunch and learns and, you know, the big events and that kind of thing. So it's because it's based on relationships, you can structure it however you want. So if you have, you know, if you have your private money lender, let's say you're a newer investor, the private money lender also has their own short-term rentals and they have, you know, X amount of dollars that they can lend to you, let's say for, I don't know, furnishings, but then you could make them a co-host so they can help you with the management of it, but you're paying them more than the 10% interest. They're getting their points and they're getting like a cut off at the top of the bookings. So, and I think I would be open to that because I think, you know, if you're going to be a private money lender, it just gives you more leverage to make sure you're getting paid back. So that's my big thing with private money lenders using your self-directed IRAs, make sure you get paid back. So.
Yeah, I'm a mortgage loan officer, so I was trying to look at the difference between, you know, the difference would be if you want to go, you know, just regular conventional loan or if you want to go with this.
Yeah, now with the interest rates raising, what do you think, Susan? Do you think private money lenders will charge more? Yeah. Yeah, so like 12, 13. Yeah, points are going to go up and then, yeah, so it just.
In about 6 months.
Yeah. So again, everything is based on the relationship with the self-directed IRAs because you always want to make sure you're getting your money back. So, okay, well, I do have online courses. I do teach people how to do this. I teach them how to start a short-term rental business. I teach them the strategic planning and growth. Not really pitching. I'm just letting you know that this is what I do ongoing about how to set up your whole business. I do have a special offer. Of course, there's like more, you know, like commercial. If this is something you're interested in, just email me at Nancy at either kbnhomes.com or winningdeals@heels.com. I'm going to be hanging out here afterwards. And then I also want to give a plug for our conference. So Susan Tierney, Kristen Gerst, and Jerry Thompson and I are hosting and organizing a sorry guys, ladies only conference in September. It's going to be actually in Granbury, Texas. And we're going to be, in addition to short-term rental strategies, we're going to be going over how to recession-proof your investing. It's going to be for newer investors. We're going to have personal growth sessions, you know, action plans. So I have some flyers about that. And we're excited because we're charging $9.95. That's our early bird special. We know it's early. It's in September, the weekend. It's right before the Quest event, as a matter of fact. So get those early bird. Do you want to say any shout out about it, Susan, about all the stuff you're going to be giving your...
It's soup to nuts, everything from owner financing to Airbnb, no sales, everything that you need to know about it.
Yes, like we're not leaving anything out. So 2 great days. And then Saturday night, we're having a like a get together at one of my Airbnbs. It's all catered and all that. And then guys, we are going to, you don't get to come to the conference, but we are going to have some excursions for you. So if you want to, you know, and let your gal come, your partner come, you know, we're going to have some fishing and golfing excursions. My lovely husband, Brian, he's going to take you out boating and everything. So here's my contact. I just want to thank everybody for coming. I know sometimes it's a Tuesday night, you're tired, you got your kids or whatever. This is all my contact info. So as a favor, what I would like is if you could follow me, especially on my YouTube channel. I have a lot of stuff out there about short-term rentals. You can just find it by Nancy Wallace-Laabs. I have one about how you can take your long-term rental into short-term rental. And give me a subscribe. I think I was telling somebody I'm only 3 people away from 200, and my goal was to at least get to 200. So we need to get up there, right? And then email me. And then I do have this one thing, and it's free to everybody. If you would like this, it's called my short-term rental kick starter kit. This is actually the mini version, and this goes through all my favorite things with the links, so you can get right to them. It has the questions you need to ask, the overview, and the best practices for a short-term rental business. So if this is something that you'd like, you got to email me for it, and then I'll send you a link to get this. So this is it won't look like, it won't have this. I had this printed just for here, but it'll be a download for you. So, well, thank you, everybody. Is there any questions? Any questions on the comments or anything? Just covered it all. Okay. Yes.
Discussion about the hard money loan.
For what?
To purchase that property through our SDIRA, that hard money loan.
So you cannot combine your self-directed IRA with any loan. So if your IRA can't, and if anybody knows about the now, but the self-directed IRA has to own it in whole. So you can't use like 50,000 from your self-directed IRA and then go borrow 150 from, a hard money lender, a private money lender, a conventional lender. You can't combine that. Now I have been called, a couple of people have called me about, and I said, hey, if you know the answer, get back to me, because they say that there is a way that you can do this with a non-recourse loan with a self-directed IRA. I have not met anybody that could confirm that. So if anybody, I would love that, because I think if people want to know how to do that, but I've followed up with mortgage people, with Quest people, and so far, because I would do that all day long. I mean, think about that. If you could just take that as the down payment and go get a loan, yay, that's a home run, but no, so good try. So any other questions? All right, well, thanks very much. I'm going to be hanging around. I guess we're going to have some beer and wine back there and some more pizza. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the time. Yeah.
Let me take that. Let me turn that mic off.
Okay.
It
Did
quit like right towards the end.
Okay.
Your battery was low.
Okay. Yeah, not used to wearing this. Okay.
Alrighty, everyone. We are going to have networking for another 30 minutes, so feel free to talk, grab some more drinks and food in the back. Me and Marilyn are still here, so just come up and ask us any questions if there's anything you're interested in.